Russ Mitchell, how the heck are you, man? Welcome into the game in Tuscaloosa.
I'm kicking the tires and lighting the fires, but not kicking as many tires as the Alabama Crimson Tide are at the moment.
Hey, but listen, we got a big opponent this weekend, man. We're only a 50-point favorite against.
Nobody leaves the stadium. Everybody sit in your chair, and nobody's allowed to breathe unless I say so.
Thanks, Nick.
Rat poison. Look, you know what? You go to the game, have a fun time, watch your team, enjoy yourselves, and if you're up 50-0 in the third quarter, go home if you want to, because
there's other games on, right?
Yes, and it's just not the end of the world, man. I mean, just go home. I mean, it's not the end of the world. If your team wants to schedule somebody other than New Mexico, so at least like the A&M game, you guys controlled that game, but that was still a game. You can stay and watch that. You're up 50-0 in the end of the second quarter against some directional school from Illinois. It's okay to go home.
So, Russ, what are your thoughts about Alabama? I mean, is this Alabama's world and everybody else is just playing in it? I mean, is that kind of where you're at, or where are you at?
So I'm old. I know I don't sound old. At least I like to think that. That's all I got left, man. And I've seen a lot of football, right? I mean, I once sat down and tried to figure it out. I've been to every stadium, and I'm old. This is maybe by the end of the season, this might be the best team I've ever seen.
Oh, glory. Time out. Nick Saban told us after the game on Saturday, he wants the media to talk negative about his team, Russ. I mean,
okay, I'll do that.
Okay, please.
That.
Okay, all right, please. Throw darts, make up stuff, anything. Please, Nick Saban, talk bad about his team.
The secondary is still inefficient. You see guys not running the routes correctly as receivers, and that's about it. You know, I mean, look, at the end of the day, the only team that can beat this Alabama team is Alabama. I mean, Ohio State's playing really well. It's still too early. There's nobody on the schedule that I see that's going to give you all trouble until you go to Baton Rouge. And then it's more about Baton Rouge than it is LSU. I'm still not sold on this LSU team. In fact, we'll talk about it in a sec, but this Ole Miss game this weekend should be kind of interesting.
All right. Well, why don't we just make that transition now? I mean,
yeah, and, you know, listen, y'all are going to have to get – when you're talking about this year's Crimson Tide, you know, I mean, I don't want to say it's going to get boring, but, I mean, it's going to get boring. I mean, this team is really good. And so, you know, but the great thing about Saban is, you know, Saban's never satisfied. He'll always find something. And it's true in life. You know, you can always find something to nitpick. But you should also stop and enjoy the fact that you're really, really good. This game against, you know, that team that you crushed, that Ole Miss team that you simply embarrassed, is going to head down into Baton Rouge, and it should be an interesting game. I don't think that this is an LSU offensive line that's got 3 guys hurt. 2 of them won't play. So it's an offensive line that's struggled a bit. This is a Louisiana Tech team that threw for over 300 yards last week against LSU in Baton Rouge. La Tech threw for 330 yards.
Ooh.
So, you know, I'm not nearly as sold on – look, it's a very good LSU defense. It's the best run defense. They got a better run defense. Okay, you know, and it's hard to look at stats, too, because I recognize at the end of games, teams are – you've got backups in, so you don't have your first string in, so it's hard to really, you know, use statistics to analyze this Alabama football team right now. But the LSU run defense is ranked best in the SEC. There's only one team that's rushed for over 100 yards against them. It was Auburn on the road, and they only ran for 130. So LSU will make the Ole Miss team one-dimensional and they'll have to throw. The thing is, I think they'll do a better job. They'll do a better job throwing against LSU certainly than they did against Alabama.
So, Russ, when you look, though, I mean, don't we have to at least step back a little bit? And you look at LSU, if you would have said, hey, on September the 26th, on a Wednesday afternoon, we'd be talking about LSU in the top 5. I mean, that team
Shocking.
is – yeah. I mean, they've at least made it this far.
Well, yeah, and I mean, they've done it by obviously protecting the ball, right? So they had their first turnover last week. They're doing a very good job in turnover margin. They're being very efficient with Burrow. I mean, I still, let me check it really quickly, but I still think he's throwing for under 50%, right? So, I mean, that is again in the great tradition of LSU quarterbacks. Just be efficient and don't mess up. So Burrow is completing only 49% of his passes right now, but no interceptions. 3 touch. Let's look at the Joe Burrow stat line, shall we?
Okay, let's do it.
He's completing 4 games in. We're a third of the way into the season. The Cat's completing 49% of his passes with only 3 touchdowns. But no interceptions, And if you're not fumbling the ball and you're not throwing interceptions, and if you have a very good defense, then, you'll beat top 10 teams, which is what they've done. They've beaten 2 top 10 teams, and that's why they're in the top 10 themselves.
Hey, will you break down Jared Stidham's, stat line if you don't mind? Because he's
You are heartless, man. At least the guy is, the shocking thing with Jared is just the production, right? Only 179 yards a game. And we all expected a lot more than that from an efficient, he's one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the conference, right? Once you get past Tua and Fromm. By the way, interesting that both Tua and Fromm, both sophomores, are completing 72.5% of their throws. So crazy to think that they're identical at this point in the season, but both sophomores, I know I don't want to, there's still so much football, but I want to jump ahead to the championship game and see Alabama versus Georgia part 2.
Okay, but let's go back to Auburn here just for a minute. Okay, we've been pointing out a stat all week. Tua Tagovailoa, 12 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. You look at Jalen Hurts, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. And you look at Jared Stidham, he only has 3 touchdowns and he's played
2 interceptions.
Yeah. I mean and then you add that they cannot run the ball. Then what are they able to do? Not much.
Well, we saw this in the Washington game, right? I mean, and ever since then, this offensive line and we've talked about this since Malzahn got there, you and I. The only way that offense works is if it's not about the quarterback. It's not about, you can put a cornerback in to play quarterback at Auburn, which we saw with Marshall, right? If the offensive line is playing well, if they're very efficient, that's what you can have anybody, as long as they're talented. And by, that offensive line, if it's not up to snuff, then you can't get the rushing game going and you're going to struggle at quarterback too. And I think that, everybody's responsible for their own play, but I think the offensive line issues at Auburn have been responsible for a slow start for Jarrett and a slow start for the rushing game.
So let's play the win-loss record here with me. You look at Auburn for a couple of minutes. I mean, don't you see more losses?
So Alabama's playing so well. There's nothing else to talk about except rag on Auburn.
Yeah, but I mean, it's the future, man. I mean, I know Southern Miss is easy. They go to Starkville in a couple of weeks.
Starkville.
Yeah, Mississippi State. Yeah.
Yeah, boy. Just a bit startling that performance against Kentucky. And crazy to think that Kentucky leads the SEC right now in offensive rushing. And by the way, it's not just Snell. Rose is running well. Wilson as a quarterback is running well. I mean, and they have a huge offensive line, huge, and all upper class. I mean, that is a really good rushing team. And South Carolina is going to have their work cut out for them this weekend when they head out to play, because South Carolina's run defense is near the bottom of the conference.
So, Russ, are you buying Kentucky, though? I mean, are you buying them Or is this just, they beat Florida, which obviously killed Tennessee. But, are you buying Kentucky? Would you buy them?
Yeah, it's difficult making these comparisons because, Texas Tech just went on the road and absolutely crushed a very good Oklahoma State team in Stillwater. Crushed. And Texas Tech lost to Ole Miss by 20. So, when you start looking at these, Florida versus Tennessee and Florida versus – to answer your question, it's so hard to buy Kentucky, but yeah. The problem they have is they're just so one-dimensional, man. Their passing offense is, they're ultimately at the end of the day, if you're going to be a team that's going to succeed, you have to have some balance. And their passing offense is dead last. And part of that's obviously because they run the ball so well, and that's what they want to do. But even when you make it yards per attempt, they're still down there with Vandy and LSU. And if you're passing offense, here's the perfect answer to your question, right? We haven't been able to buy LSU stock for how long? Since 2011, right? And it's because their passing offense is just so bad. They have great defenses. They can run the ball. But if you can't throw too, then teams like then the elite teams just step on the line and they make it impossible for you. Kentucky's passing offense, whether it's yards per game or yards per attempt, is down there with Vanderbilt, LSU, and Arkansas. That's why you can't buy LSU this year. That's why you can't buy Kentucky.
All right, so let me go to a comment that we've been talking about all week, and you look at Tennessee for a couple of minutes. If I said, okay, let's look ahead 2 years, September of 2020, you think Jeremy Pruitt makes it through 2 seasons in Knoxville? Russ, we're talking about a team that's not going to win an SEC game this year unless they beat Vanderbilt at the end.
Oh, they're not going to beat Vandy. So, Vandy's a decent team.
So they're going 2-0-8 back to back.
I say it's less about Pruitt than it is the Tennessee program right now.
100% agree.
Yeah, Tennessee program's in rock bottom right now. If you took Pruitt and you dropped him in Baton Rouge or you dropped him in, Athens or anywhere else, I think he would do quite well. But that Tennessee program is Butch really ran that program. They've had several. This is an example of bad hires, right? Alabama went out and spent the bank and got Nick Saban, and look how the last decade's been, right? And you see, if you make bad hires, then you pay the piper. And Tennessee's made several bad hires in a row, and they're. So you asked me, is Pruitt still there in 2020? No, I don't think he is.
I don't either.
But I don't think it'll be his fault.
I don't either. But it's that program, like Russ, they're walking in territory. I don't know if they can bounce back with all that tradition, the money, resources, whatever. I don't know if this program can bounce back. I don't know if we'll ever see Tennessee get back to where they once were.
Again, the problem Tennessee's always had from a football perspective, and I won't say always, it's really been in the last 20 years, is they don't have as much high school talent. And, you look at all the elite schools in the SEC, and they all have strong high school talent. Louisiana, Alabama, Georgia, Florida. You start getting up. South Carolina struggles. They don't get as much high school talent. And South Carolina's got more high school talent than Tennessee does. Arkansas, same thing. So, what they have done is they've spent a lot of money lately, and they have lots of money, and they have tradition and a great stadium. But it's been depressing watching Tennessee football for the last 10 years.
Yeah, it's been a while. It's really.
And this is bad. It's bad for all of us. I think we have a tendency when we're an Alabama fan or an Auburn fan to not really pay that much attention. But if Tennessee's good, it might make it harder if we lose to them. But when Tennessee's good, it's better for the SEC. It's better for football. So, this has been just same thing with USC, Notre Dame, Texas, all these programs. It's better when they have good talent and they're playing well.
Yeah, Tennessee has the second most SEC titles of any school in the SEC. Obviously, Alabama at number 1, but Tennessee right there at number 2. even though it's a significant drop-off, it's still the number 2. Russ, final question. Russ Mitchell, collegefootballnews.com. Russ, I'm old-fashioned about this 4-game thing that we've created. I'm curious where these kids are just tapping out in the middle of the season. They're quitting on their team. They're leaving to preserve that 1 year of eligibility. Where do you stand? I know Kelly Bryant's been the topic of conversation, but where are you at on this?
You know who's partly to blame for all this?
We are.
Nick Saban.
Oh.
You want me to tell you how?
How is Nick Saban to blame?
Sending 100 pieces of mail to a 17-year-old kid in one day.
Deadgum Nick Saban.
The point I'm trying to make is we, and you and I are well, not me, because I don't do it, but, you know, this fawning over 17-year-olds and 16-year-olds, you know, and following them on Twitter and, like, caring what a 16-year-old has to say. And, you know, we pump these kids up now because the recruiting is so intense, and we make them feel so elite. Look, you've always felt elite. Even when I was in high school, I mean, the coaches would come and they'd make you feel good, and the boosters would talk to you and all that. But, you know, it's just ridiculous now. I mean, for crying out loud, this whole thing about putting the hats on, you know, and about what team you go to play for. You're a superstar before. Oh, they're all superstars. They all get on TV, right? It used to just be, you know, you had to be Herschel Walker or Bo Jackson or somebody like that. And, you know, then you got a little bit of attention. Now everybody gets so much attention. So if they hit one little, you know, hiccup along the way, they want to transfer and quit. You know, I personally, I don't think Jalen should leave. I think he probably will, because he'll want to play. And, you know, this is the other thing, which I want to give credit to the Alabama's coaching staff and how they've handled this whole situation with Tua and Jalen. Because, you know, I know Jalen, it's very disappointing, but it's just, you happen to be on a team with a kid who might go down as one of the greatest college football players of all time. Tua's that good. He's that good. You know, and if it's your misfortune to happen to be playing on a team with a guy who's that good, you know, Jalen's probably the third or fourth best quarterback in a quarterback rich conference right now, and he's going to sit because he's behind a guy who's better.
I'm with you. I hear you. But at the end of the day, isn't that what we're looking for, though? We want the best guy. And
well, yeah, but, you know, back to the point, which is, you know, these kids leaving, you know, unfortunately, we've created this. We have, you know,
we did. I agree.
Kids,
100%.
They're just kids, you know. I mean, they don't know any better. They haven't had enough life experience to know better, you know. And you hope that there's some responsible adult in the room for them that can stand up and say, "Suck it up, sit down, and play." You know, and if you have to sit, then you sit, and you know. This whole middle of the season nonsense. By the way, as long as we're on it, let's give Jalen some credit. I know people whined a little bit because he had an opinion at the beginning of the year, but for the most part, that kid is, you know, towed the line, and who knows what he'll do at the end of the season. But I doubt he would ever say something during the middle of the year.
He might say that dumb radio host that's in the afternoon in Tuscaloosa is. And
Look,
then that guy
that
that makes Wednesday appearances, you never know, but
your show is a darn good show for Alabama fans. So you have some of the best information, and you cover the team better than anybody that I know. So there you go.
Russ Mitchell, thank you, man. I hope you have a great week. I appreciate you. I'll talk to you next Wednesday. Have a great one, man.
Hey, we didn't talk about it, but the Gators versus Mississippi State this weekend, that could be the most entertaining game of the week in any conference. So, you know, that's the night game on ESPN. So keep an eye on that. Florida.
And let me tell you something we just did, and you tell me if we're wrong or right, okay? Ross Dellinger, which just talked about an ice cream shop over in Starkville. He said Dan Mullen used to order the same off-the-menu creation every time he visited this Starkville frozen custard drive-through called Bops. And it was they named it the Mullen. You know what it's called now? The lateral move. The lateral move.
That is priceless.
It's
man.
awesome.
I don't think that most of the folks in I've spoken to a lot of folks in Tuscaloosa and some players. I don't think anybody's that disappointed with Mullen leaving and taking the Gators job. I mean, they're sad, but obviously that's not a lateral move.
No. But Starkville thinks so. So we'll let him keep believing and pretending. Thanks, Russ. Have a great one, man.
Take care, brother.